What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Processing Blue, where we process blue for you. I'm Alex Zietlow. He's Mike Kaye, and we cover the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. And Mike, we're in the studio today.
We are. We're in the same room. That's allowed for some reason.
I'm not sure how that is allowed, but what is allowed is the Panthers got back-to-back A-plus grades, according to Pro Football Focus. Mike, I know you're a noted PFF disciple. How you feeling about that? You think that's a fair assessment?
I think it's lacking nuance and lacking understanding. I think value at on the surface, consensus value and then situational value are two separate things. And I think we'll get into this as we kind of go pick by pick in this podcast. I just think the general, taking general opinion, I agree with consensus boards. I'm very big on consensus boards. That said, I'm big on consensus boards from the fact of bookkeeping as opposed to general analysis. Mm-hmm. And so I think as we go through this, you'll kind of see how mine and probably your positions differ from the norm. I mean, you're taking in information, you've got to factor in scheme fit, you've got to factor in general philosophy, you've got to factor in what's going on around that position, how that value is attained, all that type of stuff. And so I think we're going to have a conversation about that. I know that the Monroe Freeling pick was polarizing for this fan base.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we'll have a dialogue on that. We'll talk about our favorite picks from the class. But most importantly, you might say, hey, what the heck? How did these guys get a guest from the rookie draft class on here? So stay tuned. We're gonna have that in the middle of our show after we go over the first 4 picks in the draft. And yeah, let's get into it because there's no time to waste.
Let's go pick by pick. Mike, I was thinking that we could discuss the draft pick, give a general grade, and then also one addendum, just maybe discuss how many games each draft pick might start.
Yeah, I love that.
I think it could be a fun way to kind of get at all these draft picks. But all right, let's start here. With the overall 19th pick in the NFL draft, the Panthers took Monroe Freeling, an offensive tackle out of Georgia. Mike, your first thoughts?
I had said it in a row of radio appearances that I didn't think Monroe Freeling would get there. I thought he'd be a top 15 pick. And then I said, if Monroe Freeling's there, you draft him. Now, my thinking was, if Monroe Freeling was there, most of the group that was kind of clustered in there, I'm assuming Casey Concepcion, Dylan Thieneman, maybe even Omar Cooper might not have been there. Because in theory, it would take a lot to get him to 19. That said, I think when you look at the totality of this draft, there's a little bit of shine that comes off Monroe because of how they handled the next 2 rounds. And I think he was the right pick because he gives them so much optionality in that he's going to compete with Rasheed Walker at left tackle. Rasheed Walker's making swing tackle money. If Monroe Freeling wins that battle outright, well, gee golly, you've got a trade piece potentially in Rasheed Walker if there's an injury in a training camp somewhere, if you feel like he's going to be disgruntled, whatever, because you also have the big pebble, Stone Forsythe, in the mix as well. And then on top of that, if Ike Ekwonu doesn't come back, he's most likely, if he does come back, not going to return to form. You feel good about Freeling playing a prolonged developmental track. Maybe he's not perfect, but you feel good about him as a starting left tackle. Then on top of that, you have a decision to make at right tackle next year because you can cut Taylor Moton for a $14.6 million savings. And what's interesting about that is this. If Ike Ekwonu doesn't return to form, if he does play and is not playing particularly well, or he doesn't return at all, he's going to have to settle for a 1-year deal. If that contract is palatable on the salary cap, let's say he signs a 1-year, $10 million deal, well, you would save $4.5 million or $4.6 million by signing Ekwonu to play left tackle, moving Freeling to right tackle, and releasing Moton. And if Ekwonu wanted a long-term deal or he wanted a change of scenery, you stick with Moton at right tackle. maybe rework his contract, maybe ask him to take a pay cut, and you can stick Freeling at left tackle. You've got optionality. That's what I like about the process of this. I also think he reminds me so much of Lane Johnson. The athletic ability, the ability to get out in space. If you watch some of his crack blocks and just movement out of the pocket, like it's really impressive. And I think he's a guy who can only go up from a run blocking standpoint, from a pass blocking standpoint. His length gives him so much of a cheat code. We talked about that with Dave Canales over the years. I loved it, and I give it an A-.
Okay, I really want to hit on this one point that you said. So you're talking about not exactly short-term, like immediate needs that Monroe Freeling fulfills on this Panthers offensive line, but you are talking about just intermediate 1 to 2 to 3 year kind of window. And I think that's really important when you consider these salary cap considerations. But thinking long-term, his head coach, Kirby Smart, essentially, at Monroe Freeling's pro day, said that he will be a 10 to 15 year starter based on his upside. What does upside mean? It's because of his age. It's because of the fact that he is versatile. He can play on both the left and right side of the line, and he is immensely durable. I think he had major shoulder surgery one off season and pretty much didn't have any other major injuries on the offensive line, which is kind of hard to do. And Kirby Smart has had durable offensive linemen play in the league before. You have Andrew Thomas, who's in year 6 of the NFL, Broderick Jones, who is in year 4 of the NFL, and he started every game that he's played pretty much for the Steelers. So this is a guy who knows what he's talking about. Not that I have to vouch for Kirby Smart, because Kirby Smart is national champion and all these things. So I think the long term as well as the intermediate term is interesting as well. I'm giving it a B+ purely because Dylan Thieneman was on the board, and that's something that we weren't expecting. Obviously, the Ty Simpson pick for the Los Angeles Rams just really threw everything into chaos. So I'm going to give that a B+. How many starts do you think Monroe Freeling will have this year?
Ooh, I think if you're setting the odds, it's plus or minus 14. I'm going to go the over.
Okay.
And I think that he is a week 1 starter.
Okay. I think the over too. I think Rasheed Walker will come in if Monroe Freeling gets beat up, but we're on the same page with that. I don't see why he doesn't start early.
The only way I see the scenario playing out where he wouldn't start early is if they try to cross-train Walker to play left and right, and he just absolutely can't play right in case Taylor Moton gets injured, where you might say, well, let's develop him behind the scenes and maybe use him as a swing tackle the first month of the season, see where he's at, what have you. To me, tackle is not a position where I feel like you have to wait, because the best way to learn and progress is by the action and the contact, which he's not going to get that much of in practice. He's also going to have 5 preseason games to work through. So I think that's his kind of wait and develop period. He's also so young and so athletic that I think he can cheat a little bit. Whereas if you were more of a stationary blocker and you were retreat blocking and taking on that mass amount of weight and impact, it might be a little jarring compared to what you did. But he's also played in the SEC, where you've got the top talent in college football, and probably the most pro-ready talent is what I should say. I think bringing up Thieneman is important, and we're going to talk about this more than we would the other pick. So if you're thinking this is a long diatribe,
yeah, we got
I think it's because this is so layered and so nuanced. To me, this is also important for the long-term outlook of Bryce Young. If Bryce Young is successful, Freeling will be on his rookie contract throughout the first 3 years of when that extension kicks in. And I think that is extremely advantageous for the Panthers. I also think when you're thinking about T-Mac, if they want to get ahead and give him an extension after year 3, that also coincides with this. So they're in a spot right there where I think they want to extend guys long-term, and Freeling allows them because he is a premium pick. And I just think it's a very good process. Do I think it's perfect? No, but I do think it's a good process, especially if he can start right away.
Yeah. Great salary cap stuff right there, Mike. Let's move on to the second round pick. And again, we're not going to spend as much time on Lee Hunter as we did Monroe Freeling, but I do think these picks are connected in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, what do you think of Lee Hunter's selection?
So I've talked about it probably more than anybody. I think they needed a Na'Shawn Robinson replacement. And I actually think Lee Hunter is a Bobby Brown replacement, and Bobby Brown is now a Na'Shawn Robinson replacement.
You heard it here first.
I think they will use Bobby more as an end this year because I think his nose tackle upside is kind of tapped. I think if they can develop him a little bit as a rusher and as an early down guy, where you can have on the line Derek Brown on one side, Bobby Brown on the other, and Lee Hunter in the middle, you feel very good about that. I also think Lee Hunter allows you to make up for Turk Warden's lack of run stopping prowess. So if you were to rush to Turk's side, you have another guy who can kind of move in and has this great burst and can take on double teams and do that. I think the pick makes sense. It's a little underwhelming. Probably wouldn't have traded up for him, but the way they explained it was the cluster that they had was kind of getting sapped. I like Lee Hunter. I do. But again, when you look at the totality of the draft, you have to say, well, there were safeties still available. They didn't touch safety until the 5th round. We'll talk about that later, but I do understand their value in the trenches. It is a premium position. I'd like to see a little bit more pass rush out of him. He kind of projects as like, I covered Roy Miller in Jacksonville. Todd Wash worked with him. Very sound, 2-gapping nose tackle, could do a lot of different things. I just kind of wonder if he's going to have the upside of the 2nd round pick. Now, he's got a very high floor because of his burst, his power, his size. He can stop the run. At worst, he's just kind of like a middling rotation player. That's pretty good. The downside is not what I'm concerned about. The upside is what I'm more concerned about. I gave it a B because of that.
What do you think about the theory that this was more or less a reaction to the Panthers going offensive line in the 1st round? In other words, you had some defensive talent, some defensive playmakers available in the 1st round. And I know that Dan Morgan said that his front office was only doing best player available. But what do you think about the theory that, okay, well, we got an offensive guy in the trenches. Let's go get a defensive guy, perhaps earlier than the Panthers might have wanted to. Do you think there's any credence there?
I think there's some logic to that. If you remember, Dan Morgan's pre-draft availability said that it was top heavy. Yeah. That typically means you've got to take a guy in the top 3 rounds. They were picking later in the 3rd round, obviously. I get that. I do think that that's valid. I think Lee Hunter's size, length, and burst allow you to make up maybe for the shortcomings of other guys on the line. And we don't need to rehash that. We talk about that all the time. This guy's a guy who can be a piece for 4 years, and then you figure it out. He's well-traveled, so he should be able to assimilate himself pretty well. I think it's a good pick. I mean, it's a good pick. I don't think it's a great pick. Like it's a like, right? Like it's a like for me if we're talking about that. So what do you got?
I ended up giving him a B. I think he's going to start. This is kind of a cop out. I think he's only going to start 5 games.
Okay.
I think the Bobby Brown move to the end would make sense, but I do think either him or Turk Warden is going to get the majority of the starts. And he'll come in as, I guess, a rotational guy. What about you?
I think he will start. Dan Morgan says that they don't look at guys as starters on the line. It's a rotation. So it's about situation and opponent. I think that Bobby Brown will start at nose tackle in games where they feel like they're going to pass a lot. So and guys are going to have pretty up the middle attacks. I think if you're facing more of an outside zone look, you're going to want to have guys who are athletic, who can move in space, and then that might be and can set the edge and can do all their stuff. So that's where I think you can maybe do Derek Brown, Bobby Brown, and
Lee Hunter,
as opposed to Turk Gordon, who I think will play against teams that are very pass heavy, especially on early downs.
Do you have a number of games to start?
I'll say 7.
Okay. Moving on to the third round, Chris Brazzell II, who Dave Canales considers, quote, one of my favorite players in the draft, speedster wide receiver. Mike, what you think?
He's wanted a deep threat the entire time he's been here. I mean, as a guy who's a big fan of Andy Reid was always known for having the guy who could take the top off the middle, or top off the defense, excuse me. And that's what Brazzell can do. I mean, this guy's got lights out speed. He's also got really good size. So if you throw it down the field and the ball's not perfect, he's got the catch radius to make up for it, which is something that they've seemingly targeted for their talent around Bryce Young. I think he is going to affect the intermediate game quite a bit, because I think he's going to you've got to respect his speed and his size. That empowers a double team even more. And that'll open things up for the tight ends. It'll open things up for the slot receiver, who I'd imagine in 3 receiver sets, it'll be T-Mac at the X,
yep,
Brazzell at Z, and then Coker in the slot. And you can kind of rotate them out, because Brazzell can play in the slot. I just don't know how many slot opportunities he's going to get as a rookie, because they probably don't want to overload him. And the thing is, too, is like, I think he complements everybody else in the roster. He's somebody who is not of the talent or of the same talent as T-Mac or as Coker, or really even as Jimmy Horn, who everybody kind of bills as this fast guy, but he's more quick than fast. I think Mechie and Bryson Tremaine can benefit from him. I even think in a way, if they view X as somebody who's part of their future, he's a guy who can get more slot reps out of this. But I also think he's a very massive threat to X, in that Leggett needs to show something. I think Leggett's saving grace right now is being a returner, and that's not a great position to be in as a former first round pick. What's your take on Chris Brazzell?
I largely agree with you. Kind of an underrated route runner, I think, in many ways. Everyone kind of goes to his speed as his main attribute, and that's great. His ability, Dave Canales mentioned this, his ability to catch the ball and stay on his feet on deep routes, and haul the passes in and then complete the touchdown. Saw it a couple times while he was at Tennessee. I'm giving him an A-, and the minus is purely, I actually don't really have any negatives. It's not one of, I don't think it just shocks me to the point where it's like worthy of an A, but I don't really have any negatives for the pick. I think this is exactly what this wide receiver room needed. I think he's going to start all 17 regular season games. What about you?
I'm kind of whelmed. Like, I give it a B+. Like, I think I would say 10 games, because I think they'll use a lot more 12 and 13 personnel to start games than they have in the past. But I think Brazzell is the first guy up as the number 3 wide receiver. I think he has to be. I think he's so dynamic. I think they got a steal there, and the fact that they let it come to them is great. Again, there were guys on the board that I would have taken over him, but I get it.
Bro, I also wrote about Brazzell earlier this week, and I knew this, but Bryce Young's stats when he throws the ball with over 20 yards of intended air yards is nuts. Like, he's one of the best deep passers in the league statistically. He just doesn't have enough attempts. He has 41 attempts. Meanwhile, Matthew Stafford, the MVP and the best deep passer in the league statistically, had like 84 attempts or something.
Well, I think that plays into the average, right? Because it's limited. But I agree with you. I think it's time to let Bryce cook, so to speak, as the kids say.
That's what the kids say. All right. Let's move on to Will Lee out of Texas A&M, and let's keep this thing going. What you think?
So I like his brashness as a player. Like, he is extremely physical. Like, don't call him the blanket for no reason. I do have concerns about his long-term outlook as a zone coverage guy, because he, as he has mentioned, he is so good at press man. Now, EJ gets a job somewhere else and they switch up the defense and the coverage unit, then they're taken care of there. I do think he can play in zone. I think he will be the first corner off the bench. I think he was really important for the long term, because he probably should have been drafted in the 3rd round in like a eventual starter range. And Mike Jackson's in the final year of his contract. I actually think he can learn a lot from J.C. Horn. I like the pick. I gave it a B.
I too. Questions with scheme fit as well. Also, question about Corey Thornton. How do you?
I think Corey's gonna.
Okay.
I think Corey's gonna move into the nickel.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I think he's gonna start. I mean, 4 games. I don't know.
I'm
Fewer than that?
gonna say 1.
Okay.
Because either they'll be out of the playoff race or they'll clinch a playoff berth and he'll play the last game of the season.
Got it. Before we move on to the 5th round guy, we are going to actually talk to the 5th round guy. Let's kick it on over to our interview with Sam Hecht.
And we're joined by Panthers 5th round pick, Sam Hecht. Sam, what the heck? How did you get on the Processing Blue podcast so fast?
You guys invited me on. I really appreciate it.
So let's just get straight into it. You're coming in, not a lot of 5th round picks get the option of competing right away for a potential starting job. But when you watch the tape, you see the athleticism, you see the technique. Coming in as a walk-on, getting kind of seasoned behind the scenes, and then starting 25 straight games, how prepared do you feel to compete at this level?
I feel prepared. Obviously, the NFL is a different level. There's still going to be a bunch of stuff that I'll have to learn, adjust to the game speed, in the playbook. But I'm excited for that task.
Talking about the film just in general, your pulling ability just sticks out. What is it about being kind of, I like to call like the Howard Mudd style center, where you could be like Jason Kelsey or Cam Jurgens or Ryan Khalil and kind of just get out in space? What do you like about being able to do that?
That's my favorite type of plays, when I get to go pull, get out in space, use my speed, and just make a hole for the running back. That's kind of my game plan.
Sam, I'm curious about your walk-on story. I'm sure you've had to tell this story a lot throughout the pre-draft process, but can you tell us a little bit about that? Was it always going to be Kansas State? Did you see a path to playing at Kansas State? What was life for Sam Hecht's life going into college?
Yeah. So I guess in high school, it started out, I was kind of undersized. So I was kind of under-recruited. I had some FCS offers, but I kind of wanted to believe in myself, trust myself, and go into the Power 5 program. I mean, growing up in Kansas City, Kansas State was the football school around here, and I knew I wanted to play there. So luckily they gave me a preferred walk-on. Kind of had somewhat of a relationship with the coaches over there, because Coach Kleiman and Coach Riley, our head coach and offensive line coach at the time, they actually coached my brother up at North Dakota State. So I kind of knew them a little bit. So they gave me a preferred walk-on offer, and I took that and just showed up every day, went to work, and competed.
Did you see a path to starting? Did you see a path to, getting to the NFL when you were a freshman? And I know looking back, it's probably easy to say, yes, I always believed in myself, but truly, did you see that for yourself?
I'm gonna be honest, no, not really. I came in, I attacked each day like I would be like a pro, like with the work ethic and the mentality. But as a walk-on, you didn't really have too much confidence in that. It wasn't until freshman year fall camp where I was doing pretty good as a freshman. I had a meeting with my O-line coach, Connor Riley, and he just sat down with me and just told me that I'm going to play meaningful football there at Kansas State. It kind of just gave me the confidence to keep pushing, and there's light at the end of the tunnel.
I know you brought up your brother. Who's the biggest influence you've had from a football standpoint in your career or really in life? Who's the guy or gal that you've kind of leaned on throughout this journey that's kind of kept you upright, while you've kept the quarterback upright?
I mean, first person that comes to mind is my fiance. Getting married coming up in June. She's kind of just my everything, really. She gets me through a lot. She's my biggest supporter. I lean on her a lot. I'm very grateful for her. And then I guess in high school, growing up, I had an O-line coach. His name was Coach T. Terrell. He sadly passed away about 2 years ago, but he was definitely like one of my biggest motivators also. I mean, that dude believed in me more than I believed in myself. He pushed me. He was one of the best guys I ever met. And then when I got to college, my online coach, Connor Riley, those are the main people that really were in my corner throughout my time.
Have you been able to stay in touch with your high school coaches, like family or anything, or kind of get to acknowledge them now that you've kind of made this huge step throughout the journey?
Yeah, I mean, just talking with like his best friend, and then my fellow teammates in high school, and just like knowing how proud he would be right now. And so yeah, a little bit.
That's wonderful, Sam, and congratulations on the engagement as well. Yeah, I saw that you were on Kaye Adams's show earlier today, and you were asked about something that I'm sure you've been asked about a couple of times in the pre-draft process, and obviously since you've been drafted. No sacks in 2 years, no penalties in 2 years. Were you aware of that prior to all this like media attention kind of constantly bringing it up, or was that something that hit your radar? Like I don't know, was that part of your consciousness?
It really wasn't part of my consciousness. I kind of just go in with the mindset of just focusing on the week, the day. Don't really look at the stats or anything, but it definitely was brought up a few times. But I try not to think about it.
Is it one of those things like how do you is it one of those things where you're just like, guys, I'm really not focused on that? Because obviously no offensive lineman wants to commit a penalty. They don't want to give up a sack, and that's something that you should hang your hat on. But at the same time, it doesn't seem to be your job. It doesn't seem to be your main focus as a center.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not a main focus. I think just surprisingly and luckily, I just didn't give up a sack or had a penalty my last year. I think it just happened that way, I guess. I guess the people around me kind of helped me out. Quarterback got me out of situations and stuff like that.
I don't mean to bring this up because it's probably not a great memory, but you guys played Texas Tech this year.
Yep.
And one of your draft classmates,
Yep.
Lee Hunter, had a tackle for a loss in the game. Okay, give me the Sam Hecht scouting report on what Lee Hunter brings to this team.
Yeah, I mean, Lee's a phenomenal player. I got a chance to play with him at the Senior Bowl also. So he was on my team, but going against him in practices, and obviously playing him in the season. He's a phenomenal player. He's really good, plugging the hole, the run game. I mean, that dude's a tank. And then also, like, not a lot of people that can plug the hole can also give up good pass rush. He's really good in that. He's just an overall great guy. Got to meet him down there, and then fantastic player. I'm excited to get. Sorry.
Sorry. You're joining a line with a lot of veterans. Taylor Moden's entering year 10. Robert Hunt's a Pro Bowler. Damian Lewis has been around Dave Canales most of his career. When you get to a place where there are these guys who have an exponential amount of experience, what type of things do you want to take from them from an advice standpoint, but also from how they're taking care of their body standpoint, but also how they work day to day?
Yeah, I mean, just really everything. Just pick their brains and see how they go about the week and preparation and like nutrition, and like just studying the game of football and just see how they see things. That's one of the things I'm super excited about. Just learn as much as I can from those guys.
You will be snapping the ball to Bryce Young, and I'm curious what you know about him coming into the NFL.
Yeah. So I wasn't playing at the time, but we played him in the Sugar Bowl, so I got to watch him. But he's a fantastic quarterback. I'm excited to protect him. He makes incredible plays, and I'm just excited to meet him and protect him.
What about his mobility, him being able to, like you said, your quarterback at Kansas State was able to extend plays and that sort of thing. And that's kind of Bryce Young's superpower, at least. And he got to showcase it a lot last year, him being able to extend plays in the backfield and stuff. Does that excite you? Does that particular part of his game excite you?
100%. I mean, his ability to extend plays and make these crazy plays makes us look better and kind of saves our butt sometimes. And in college, Avery Johnson, my quarterback, and so he's kind of similar in that regards. So I'm just super excited.
Well, Sam, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on being drafted, and hopefully we'll see you again on the Processing Blue podcast.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you guys for having me on. It was fantastic.
All right, that was good stuff from Sam.
Yeah, no, it was. I think that he is a guy that is going to be in a position to be the premium takeaway from this draft. Not the best pick, or like not the best player, but he could be the best pick. I think he can start right away. Like, he's a guy that fits the zone blocking scheme very well. He can play inside and outside zone. He can get out in space. He can pull. He's a guy who is more athletic and technically driven than size driven, which I think is centers the one spot you can get away with that in this particular scheme and philosophy. I also kind of love that he's got the athleticism and strength and length of Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt to begin his career. I think actually what helps him and hurts Luke Fortner is that Luke Fortner can play guard pretty soundly. So his versatility, kind of the Brady Christensen dynamic where you can use him in multiple spots, whereas Hecht's really just a center. Same with Nick Samak. We've talked about it before. It is hard to keep a guy on the active roster if he's a backup center only. And I think that helps Hecht and Samak in a potential battle with Luke Fortner, who has had his ups and downs and all arounds. But look, I had Hecht in, I think it was my second mock draft, is their third round pick. So I was very high on him. I think he's a guy, everybody's going to blow up the no sacks, no penalties, no hit. Yeah. I mean, center is a position that is greatly impacted by the guards. And so I think, when he gives up that first sack, everybody's going to be like, oh my gosh. But like, he's combo blocking, he's in a zone. Like, there's a lot of stuff that can happen. And it's part of the reason why people don't like offensive linemen, don't like Football Focus, is that they're grading stuff without knowing what the blocking assignment is.
Right.
But yeah, I think his upside's very high.
You gave him an A, right?
I did. He, in my opinion, is the best process pick of the draft for them.
I'll stick with A too. There's nothing wrong I can say about him. That said, and maybe this deserves an A-. I think Luke Fortner is going to start the majority of the year because you pick him up in free agency. He's a guy with NFL playing experience. All these questions about Bryce Young in this important of a year, we'll see in training camp. We'll see how their chemistry kind of comes together. But I think that they spent wise money on Luke, and I think he's going to, and they're going to let Sam kind of develop behind him.
You how many games?
I said 1 to 2 purely because let's go with 1, and I'm purely saying that because if he's the next guy up. So if Luke gets hurt or something,
I'm going to go 13.
Okay.
And here's why. I think that part of what's going to factor into Sam starting is if Monroe's starting. Because having 2 rookies on that line when, like you said, Bryce has to really nail this might not be optimal. at least from the onset. So I think they're going to the landing zone is going to be a little bit longer for Hecht. I think if you decide that you're going to go with Walker, I think Hecht starts from the jump.
Okay. That's interesting.
And then Monroe kind of gets like a landing strip of, hey, when he's going to play, he's going to be ready. But I don't know. I mean, I'm fascinated because I do think those two competitions directly affect each other.
Oh yeah, and we're talking about this super early.
Yeah, we haven't seen the pads.
I know. So like, it's a bit of a cruel question to ask how many games you're going to start, but it's fun.
You get 100% credit for it, though. It was your idea. Zach tried to talk you out of it,
and he failed. I'm just kidding. Safety, Zakie Wheatley. What you think? Another 5th round pick for the Panthers.
So he's getting a lot of buzz as a guy who should have been a 3rd round pick. I don't know that I necessarily agree after watching him. I think he was taken where he was taken. I think it was a good pick. He's a guy.
Not say that to Caleb Leach, bro.
Oh, Caleb was all about it. Yeah. Like, I could see him being a 4th round pick, but he strikes me as a long-term developmental player who's a little upright and tall. I still think Nick Scott, people are going to hate this, but Nick Scott's probably going to start at the best position. Like, yeah. I don't think they drafted a guy high enough to say, you know what, Nick, chill out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see that. I do think there's some redundancies to him with some of the guys that are in that like starting 3. I think Lathan Ransom's going to get a lot of trust early. I mean, Merrick's around, and then you also have Isaiah Simmons. So it's like,
right,
are you going to use Isaiah Simmons as a special teams only player, or are you going to let Wheatley just kind of have the ball and run with it? I don't think Wheatley is the type of player that should be a full-time post player starting out. I think he still has development to go, even though he's a 5-year player at Penn State. I do like his ball skills. I do like his attitude as a player. It seems like he's not afraid to lay the smack down or spear a dude. But I do think there's some development to be had. I do think that he is a guy that you should be excited about, but I also think you should have like developmental expectations. He, like, of the first 6 picks, I think he is very clearly a good developmental player who will be very good on special teams, who you'll see in occasional sub packages, but I don't see him as a guy who's going to start right away. And I know that a lot of people took this as me throwing shade at Nick Scott. Jordan Schultz tweeted out who won the NFL draft. I said, Nick Scott. I mean, think about it. This is the most optimal outcome for him. You can say the same thing about Trevin Wallace. They did not draft enhanced competition to unseat him. And so I think Nick Scott is in a good place. The coaching staff loves him. And really, the front office hasn't done anything to solve that. And I think that was part of my qualm with the first 3 rounds and why I can't like be like A+. I'm going to say 0 games for Wheatley.
Yeah. Okay. I'll say 3 or 4. I think he's actually a little bit more versatile than it sounds like you're giving him credit for.
No, I'm saying he is versatile, and that's why there's redundancies. Like, if he was just like a strict post safety, then I would say, hey, maybe you acclimate him and then get him ready to be the post safety.
But you even asked him in his press conference, how do you feel about playing dime linebacker?
Yeah, which he's not played. So, like, I'm asking because you develop him as a long-term backup to Merrick, which seemed to be what they wanted to do with Isaiah. Well, no, they say Isaiah Simmons. Like, to me, Lathan is a box safety. I don't really want him playing with those. And based on his usage, that's probably not what they want either. So now if you're developing him to be the long-term replacement for Nick Scott, I think there's some development that needs to be had there. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. All right, let's speed through this last one. Inside linebacker Jackson Kuwach. You know, his favorite linebacker is Luke Kuechly. That resonated with the fan base.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, that's great and everything. Listen, I think he's a guy that is a 1-year wonder at the college level. Eric Galco came out and give him the Shrine Bowl shine for being there. I got to see the pads on with him, and I don't think there's enough tape for you to be like, yeah, he's a sure thing. It was a flyer. They took a one, I would have taken Mason Rager there, the Wisconsin edge rusher, but I get it. Like, if I'm Tracy Smith, I feel like my special teams upside is much better this year than it has been the last 2 years, because you bring back all those guys, Robert Rochelle, like Caleb Evans, Isaiah Simmons, Thomas Incoom, Claude Cherilus. To me, Kawach, if we're putting him on the Kawach list, would be more so Bam Martin Scott competition than starting. Yeah, I think Trevin Walsh is going to be the starter. And I know some people are going to groan at that, but the reality is they need to see what he can do in a full healthy season with a premier guy next to him. I mean, we saw Shaq got injured really early in his rookie year, and then he had to replace him, and then he's playing with Josie Jewell, who I thought was kind of like a fine starter. Obviously, Christian Roseboom was below fine, and now you get a guy who's incredible in space. So let's see if he can benefit from that.
Just firing a straight at Christian Roseboom, obviously below fine.
I mean, listen, the first 6 weeks of the season were like they made Josie Jewell look like an all-pro.
Yeah.
And listen, I like Christian Roseboom, but I think he's a third linebacker. Like, Trevin Walsh has either played next to a number 2 linebacker or a number 3 linebacker the majority of his pro career. Now he's got an alpha next to him. And I think Trevin shines in a role where he can be the thumper as opposed to the most athletic guy at the position, the most dynamic guy at the position. He's just not that guy. And so I think this is a huge year for him. And I think he's a guy who can meet the challenge if he can stay healthy and his shoulders are healthy.
Yeah. Do you want to give a grade to Tim? I said 0 games started. Let's go B-.
Oh, I give him a C+.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can read all of my kind of musings about this draft class on charlotteobserver.com, where we have all of our draft coverage.
Before we get out of here, because undrafted free agents are really important. Literally, Jalen Coker is like ascending as a star right now. Corey Thornton, blah, blah, blah. Is there a number 1 undrafted free agent that you really like that this front office picked up?
I mean, they reportedly gave Haynes King $250,000. Now, I don't mean to be a butthead here, but that's the highest amount you can pay a practice squad player. So if they were to cut him and put him on the practice squad, then that money would, like, essentially he's been guaranteed that he will be a premium practice squad player.
Well, why is that? Why are you being a butthead for that?
Well, I'm not trying to like squash a guy's dreams, but they have historically not counted those guys inexplicably. Like, the guy I do like, though, and what I've gotten positive buzz about, is Vanderbilt offensive lineman Isaiah Glass. They do not have a great backup guard situation. It's Chandler Zavala and like Sadiq Charles, and I think it would behoove them to have more cost-effective guard than probably Sadiq, who's on a veteran minimum. And if he makes the week 1 roster, it's guaranteed. So I like that. I really like Devontae Smith from Notre Dame. He could be some nickel competition. Aaron Hall was really impressive at his pro day. He's the Duke kid, and I think that's kind of interesting, like, just from the standpoint of maybe the local guy can do it. They also signed 2 Canadian dudes, which is always interesting to me, with Chuba on the roster, Albert Reese from Mississippi State, and Malik, I believe it's pronounced Miga, from Coastal Carolina. So those will be interesting guys to track. But if I had to guess who could make the roster, Aaron Hall and Isaiah Glass would be the 2 guys.
That's sick. All my friends were talking about Haynes King because he was just an anytime touchdown guarantee. This guy only at Georgia Tech.
He's a Taysom Hill-esque player.
And we'll be talking a lot more about him and the undrafted free agent guys, because that's kind of the most interesting thing to talk about during training camp season. But for now, we've kind of held our listeners here for about an hour, about 45 minutes or so. Mike, anything you want to get off your chest before we get out of here?
Well, we've got some great features on the draft picks coming up over the next couple of weeks. Rookie minicamp begins May 8th. We will be
right here.
We'll be right here with you. We'll have a preview or a recap show just after that weekend. And we've got a lot going on over the next month or so before we take our summer hiatus. We appreciate Zach for putting up with us as he does. And we'll continue to have some interviews throughout the week or throughout the off season until we get you ready for training camp.
And with that, here we go. Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike Kaye and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all of your Panthers needs. Mike, stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
That's a wrap.